Jake was a 28-year-old young professional, always running at full speed. His life revolved around his work, emails, meetings, and projects were his constant companions. Even during family dinners or weekend get-togethers, Jake found himself glued to his phone, checking for updates, or responding to work-related messages. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. After all, success required hard work, didn't it? But gradually, the people around him began to notice the absence of his presence. His friends joked about him being the workaholic, but Jake didn't mind. He thought they didn't understand the importance of his career. Despite his professional success, Jake started to feel the strain. He missed birthdays, anniversaries, and important milestones, both in his family and friends' lives. His best friend, Mark, had been telling him for months about his wedding, but Jake kept pushing it aside, telling himself that the wedding wasn't as urgent as a big client presentation he had scheduled. "I'll make it up to him," Jake reassured himself. But when the day of the wedding came, Jake was too caught up in finalizing the details of a project. He missed the event entirely. It wasn't until he received a text message from Mark, simply saying, "Wish you could have been here, man," that Jake realized something he had been avoiding for a long time. Time was slipping away from him. The next few weeks were full of small, painful realizations. Jake noticed that he no longer knew the latest updates in his friends' lives. He couldn't even remember the last time he had truly sat down with his family. The simple, meaningful moments he used to cherish, laughing with his siblings, having deep conversations with his parents, had become distant memories. It seemed like everything around him was changing, but Jake was standing still, his focus fixed on a career that, in the end, would never fill the void of lost time. One evening, his father invited him over for dinner. As usual, Jake was planning to cancel because of a looming work deadline. But his father insisted, saying, "Jake, you need to spend time with your family. Work will always be there, but time won't wait for you." Jake didn't think much of it at the time. He smiled, nodded, and promised to come over. But when he arrived, his father was already sitting at the dinner table, looking content, as if the world had slowed down for a brief moment. They ate together, and for the first time in a long while, Jake felt a sense of calm. It wasn't about the work. It wasn't about what he had to do tomorrow. It was just about being present. Later that evening, his father said something that stuck with Jake. "Son, don't let life pass you by chasing something you can't even hold. The most precious thing you have is time. If you waste it, you can never get it back." Those words stayed with Jake long after he left his father's house. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had been living in a bubble, disconnected from the world around him. It wasn't just his career that had been his focus, it was his obsession with productivity, his need to constantly be doing something, that had led him to ignore the most important moments in life. Jake tried to brush off his father's words, telling himself that he was just going through a phase. But deep down, he knew something had to change. He was starting to see the world differently. Time wasn't a commodity to be traded for work, deadlines, or achievements. It was a gift, one that could slip through his fingers if he didn't start making better choices. The deeper conflict now was clear to Jake. He had spent so much time chasing success, that he had lost touch with what truly mattered: relationships, memories, and moments that would never come back. But Jake wasn't sure how to change. Where would he even begin? The turning point for Jake came during a quiet weekend when he found himself sitting alone at his apartment, staring out the window. The city was alive with energy, but Jake felt disconnected from it all. He reflected on everything he had missed, the moments he had chosen to ignore in favor of work, the people he had unintentionally hurt by neglecting them, and the opportunities for joy that he had passed up. He realized his father's words had been true all along: time was the one thing he could never get back. That night, Jake made a decision. He would no longer live as though time was endless. He would make every moment count. The first change Jake made was simple but powerful: he turned off his work notifications on his phone. No more constant reminders of emails or messages demanding his attention. Jake also began saying no to work commitments that interfered with his personal life. He started scheduling regular breaks throughout his day, using that time to connect with his family and friends. He made an effort to show up for the people who mattered, prioritizing shared experiences over deadlines. The change wasn't immediate, but it felt right. Slowly, Jake started to feel more present, more grounded, and more connected to the world around him. Jake's relationships began to heal. He reconnected with Mark, making up for the wedding he had missed by organizing a special day to spend with him, reminiscing about old memories and creating new ones. Mark was surprised at Jake's transformation, but he could see the sincerity in his eyes. Jake's father, too, noticed the change. Their conversations, once filled with quiet tension, were now full of laughter and deeper connections. Jake had finally begun to appreciate the little things, the moments he once overlooked, like a simple conversation with his mother, or an evening spent laughing with his siblings. Jake also rediscovered his love for hobbies he had abandoned in the rush of his professional life. He had always enjoyed painting but had given it up years ago, believing it was a waste of time.